Well, hello. Beaming in from beautiful downtown Kansas City, Missouri, where everything is windy and sunny today. And good to see y'all out there. Fred, welcome to the live stream. And for anyone else who's streaming in, it's good to have you here. Jeff, nice to see you. Anybody who is new to this live stream by chance, or if you just happen to come across it after we're done and watching the recording, this is a podcast and a community of people who are seeking or who have found a secular path to recovery from addictions of all kinds. And we have podcast episodes we put out. We have this live stream. And on our YouTube channel, you can find all of it. So take a look around. And if you like what you see, go ahead and subscribe. So today, I'm going to bring Mary out, and we're going to talk about what we're going to be talking about. Hey, Mary, how you doing?
I'm good. Good morning, everyone. Hey, John.
Hello, Mary. So here we are again, another live stream. And today's topic is actually an idea from one of our listeners, Jennifer, out there, who happens to be saying good morning. Good morning, Jennifer. Good morning, Dale. Good morning, Bobbert and John and Samuel. And Jennifer wanted to talk about willingness. And, you know, she was kind of talking about willingness from the aspect of step 8, which is I think the one step that talks about willingness, you know, become willing to make amends to all people we have harmed. So I thought, yeah, interesting topic, you know, what is willingness? You know, where does it come from? If we don't have it, how do we get it? You know, there's some resources that we can access or whatever. So that will be it. And, you know, for those of you that are out there in the room, hey, Christine, and, or listening later on, you know, certainly Mary and I aren't experts on this. We're just a couple of people who think that we've done something along these lines and know something from our experience. So we're just here to share our experience. And we would love to hear from you as well. And you can do that just by chatting in the live chat here on YouTube or Facebook. And I will also later on open up the phones and you can call in as well. So, you know, another thing we will do to discuss this topic, to have some ideas around it, is I'll just read something from Beyond Belief, Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life that always works out well. And we'll just see where it goes. I guess before I do that, though, I will tell you that I was thinking a little bit about willingness today, Mary, and, you know, wanting to know exactly what it is. And so I always, you know, the best thing to do is to go to the dictionary to look up the word.
That's what I'm doing right now.
And I found that there were two parts that I got from the dictionary that I think are important when it comes to what we do here. One part of being willing is, are you ready? And the other part is, are you empowered? Do you have the power to do these things? You know, the willingness or being empowered to do that. And maybe that would help guide the conversation a little bit. You know, what is it to be ready? How can you get ready? And what is it that empowers us to do this, that motivates us to do this, that makes us want to do this? So those are some possible ideas for you.
Well, usually willingness is I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired of how I'm doing it. So right. I'm willing to be open-minded to a new approach.
Right. There's something that was with me in the beginning for sure, is there was some sort of, you know, consequence to how I was living that was motivating me to want to make some sort of change. And so, yeah, I'm willing to do something because I'm tired of going to jail all the time.
Yeah.
Something has got to change for sure.
Definitely something has to change. So I'm willing to try something different besides beating my head against this same brick wall.
Right.
Yes.
So anyway, let's go ahead and do the reading and then we'll get right on into it. So I'm going to go ahead and do a screen share. I should always prepare these in advance because I always feel like I'm clumsy when I do the screen share things.
So are we doing October 7th or which
October
one?
6th. I'll do October 6th because I thought that was a pretty good thing about willingness in there. And let me get in there now. There we go. Boom. I don't know how good you all can see that, but I'll go ahead and read it as well. Okay. This is from Joe's book, Beyond Belief, Agnostic Musings for 12-Step Life. October 6th. It is the highest form of self-respect to admit our errors and mistakes and make amends for them. To make a mistake is only an error in judgment, but to adhere to it when it is discovered shows infirmity of character. And that's from Dale Turner. And this is Joe's take on it. Self-correction and making amends is healing, humbling, and freeing. The Narcotics Anonymous workbook tells us that making direct amends, except when to do so would injure them or others, is the stage in which we get to look the world in the eyes. The amends step is the first step we are invited to use discretion. Up until now, the language has been absolute, fearless, exact nature of our wrongs, entirely ready, all these defects, all the persons we had harmed. There isn't room for creative interpretation here. The steps are extreme. We mature in our recovery. This step isn't about us, the victims of a merciless malady. It's about innocent people that we have wronged. The steps are in an order, and there is a reason that making amends isn't at the beginning. We aren't in the spotlight here. This step can't be about the drama of the lengths we are going to. These people are not the audience or a bit part in our recovery play. Step 9 is about their needs and our willingness to understand. Our old modus operandi would make this step about our journey. Now we need to live the humility as learned in step 7. We consider the impact of the deeds we listed in step 8. We imagine how the harm we have done feels to our victims. Step 9 requires prudence more than eagerness. It can be launched into because we need or want the payoff. Maybe we should ad lib and maybe we should rehearse with a sponsor, friend, or therapist. I'm a better person, but am I ready to make amends? I don't want to procrastinate, but I don't want to do harm. How should I prepare? Good questions.
Well, I would say run it by another person who you trust. And if there's any doubt, you're not ready to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that either. I was thinking to myself that, I got it from this reading, but I also looked in the book Staying Sober Without God when it comes to this step, is that start wherever you are. Mm-hmm. So if you're not completely willing to make amends to all these people that you've had relationships with that you think that you've harmed and you would like to repair the relationships, if you look at those and there's a lot of those people on that list that you just don't feel comfortable approaching right now, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Go ahead and start with wherever you are. And that just shows that you have at least that much willingness. You don't have to have the willingness to do it all at once, but if you have just enough willingness to maybe talk to one person or to do something to change the dynamics of that relationship in some way, that's all the willingness that you need. And over time, you will discover if you will, I think, become more willing to approach others that you were reticent at approaching, or you might realize that you don't even need to, that there are other ways that you can change your behaviors and therefore, mend that relationship.
Right.
So of all these steps, the amends steps are the ones where we really are impacting other people about our stuff. So I think it's important to have some caution and not to rush into it. So if you don't feel like you're entirely willing, I think that that's okay. But just focus on what you are willing to do. And as this reading says, think carefully about the other person.
Yeah, and be willing to see how whatever we did affected them and to be able to listen without justifying. So I think if I had a list right now and there was a part of me that still felt justified in what I had done and how it impacted that person, then I probably wouldn't be ready to 100% just surrender to whatever their response would be. And basically I would be saying, I'm sorry if there's anything I did that I was aware of or unaware of. I feel that when I put people on a list, that it's usually a resentment that I'm holding in my head. And that resentment takes up so much space in the place of inner peace and joy that I really want to clean up any of those relationships or memories or a time when I spoke before I should have, or any harm I did in thought, word, or deed, so that I can have more space for joy and peace in my mind and in my heart. So that way it cleans it up and I no longer have to think of them like, oh, I feel bad I did that, or I have to feel like I need to avoid them, or I have a whole story going about that thing that happened. It's a way of kind of erasing the chalkboard of the past and cleaning up the past. And that's when they say our side of the street. So I take full responsibility for what I did. And, it's good to run it by another person because we could be just so full. We've changed so much, but the people maybe that we affected haven't changed in their perception of us.
Yeah.
So when we do the amends, it's very important to, I think, run it by someone else because we might not get the response we're looking for. And I think the best way to do it is to have no expectations.
Yeah, I agree with that. Shall I read some of the comments in here? I got two one from Samuel and one from Bobbert. Samuel says, so much in that, depending on what you did, but it's step 9, isn't it? Remember being told this on my journey. So much of, and I'm sorry, I'm not quite understand, but this is my own brain fog, I think, but it is step 9, isn't it? Remember being told that's my journey.
Yeah.
Bobbert says, for me, willingness is like entirely ready. Ain't going to happen. Have to prepare a little, then jump in.
Yes. And I always did an amends, and I actually got sober by just having that one opportunity, a window of opportunity where I was willing. Yeah. And that's when I went and got a white chip. And that's when I had my last drink. Or if I'm going to do an amends, whatever it is, I usually have so much resistance that I have to tell myself, well, why don't I just be willing to even think about it?
Yeah.
And I can kind of do that several steps back. But if there's something I know I really need to do, I wait for that perfect window of opportunity when I know I'm not resistant to it, but it's something I need to do. And then I jump through the window when it's right in front of me.
So have you ever had somebody tell you to pray for the willingness?
Yeah, I've heard people say, pray for that person that you resent, or, pray for the willingness, and I think it's a way of changing your mental perspective.
Yeah. I'm not saying that to insult anyone who believes that praying, it could very well help giving good thought, and doing that. But I guess what I'm thinking is that for a large amount of people in the 12-step rooms, what empowers us or makes us willing to change is external. It's an external force that we tap into that helps us become willing, I guess. It gives us the empowerment to make this choice to change, to talk to these people and so forth. Because I've had that before too. People telling me, hey, John, just pray until you're willing or whatever.
Right.
Okay.
Or have you prayed on it? Yes.
Right. And that's one way of looking at it. And I can see how helpful that could be for someone to sit in silent contemplation, and pray to a God they may believe in for the power and the courage and the strength to carry out what they want to do to change their lives.
Right.
But if you don't have that, if you don't want to look at an external source to give you this kind of thing, then the motivation has to come from within. And I think for me, that's what I'm looking at when I'm thinking about willingness in this context. I'm thinking about, how do I become motivated here? And where do I start?
Well, I think that, perhaps the prayer part could be also wording what your intention is.
Right.
Like, dear blank, this is what I want to have happen. I need strength to be able to do this new thing that'll be good for me.
Right.
So I think perhaps I 100% believe in affirmations.
Yes.
When I'm trying to reprogram my brain, to just write it out and not write what I don't want to have happen, but don't focus on what I don't want that's happening. Focus on what I do want, and to constantly write it down and read it, and to sort of change. It's like changing something in the computer. You just put the good stuff in and change the virus. That's how I do it, is through affirmations. And I think you could also say that prayer is a form of affirmations. It's setting an intention for what you want. And so for me to get motivated,
it'd be interesting to do one of these on prayer sometime, just as a couple of atheists. I think, there's something to be said for it, honestly, when you think about it. If not to say that
repeating something that you want to have happen.
It's not like that. You don't even have to have a God that's going to do anything when you're, but just the process of just thinking mentally and preparing yourself.
Putting your attention on what you want to focus on.
Yeah, kind of.
That's what you're focusing on. Yeah.
Kinda
and so whether you believe it's an outside source or not, how do you even get to that point where you take the first step?
Right.
And sometimes you don't want to go there, but you, just like when I didn't want to drink, but my car would drive me to the liquor store anyway, even as I was saying I don't want to go. It's kind of like to go to the first meeting, even when you don't want to go, just drive there and get out of the car and walk in. And the whole time your brain is saying, I don't want to do this, but just put your body there and your mind will follow. A lot of people say that. So maybe
Right.
you don't have to think yourself into it. You just have to put yourself into it.
And I'm all about taking little baby steps too. So, and that's, I think, how willingness could be something that grows over time too. And
Oh, yeah.
motivation, and you become more and more motivated over time to do things and to change. I think that, certainly I was motivated by fear to a large extent to first
Yeah.
seek help for my drinking. And it was probably fear that kept me around for a while,
Mhm.
honestly, and this desire to escape whatever pain that I had been experiencing through the drinking. And you do experience, as you go through just not putting that stuff in your body anymore, you do kind of change the way that you think, and you put
Yeah.
some good positive people in your life, and it really does make a difference. With It did with me as far as my motivation goes.
Because you were hanging out with people that knew how to be sober and that were laughing and enjoying life while being sober.
Right.
So I think the willingness to do anything new is to find the people that are already doing it and hang out with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jay Monty has a comment. I must say that I think the AA literature had good insight into this. They talk about insight and careful sense of timing and talks about motivation. This was a step I think they got right. How about that?
There you go.
Yeah, we've talked about these amends steps before, and the way and you're right, Jay Monty. Even the literature of AA says this. There's a caveat: unless to do so injures them or others, and that is so critical. And I honestly believe that the default should be that if there's any inkling that you're going to harm somebody, just don't do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't try to get any relief by personal relief by bringing harm on someone else. They don't need to hear it.
No.
So, and so it does take some understanding of the other person involved here. And it takes some forgiveness, I think, of,
Yourself.
those of yourself and of others, and understanding that they may not forgive you. They may not want to hear what you have to say.
No,
But
that's true.
you can still be forgiving of yourself and of the situation, and you can still have some willingness to change going forward.
Absolutely. That's like a living amends. It
And
doesn't
most
have to
of
be a
mine were,
formal amends, on
yeah,
paper or on the phone or in person. It could actually just change yourself and live a better life and don't do that shit anymore. And that could be your
yeah,
living amends. Yeah.
yeah. And that truly is how most of mine were. And I think a lot of that had to do is just where the stage of life that I was in at the time. I was 25 years old. I was pretty young. I wasn't married. I didn't have family. I didn't have a lot of I didn't have a lot of interactions with human beings, I guess.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that much. And the people that I really owed amends to were well, my father,
Mhm.
and he is not someone who wanted to rehash the past.
Right.
And it hurt him. And he was happy to see me sober. So the best amends I could make to him was to be
Stay sober.
sober and not be a problem anymore.
Yeah.
And he was happy. And another thing I would do with him, I would go visit him on Sundays, and when I was younger, and he would want me to spend the night there at his house, right? Because he wanted me having me around, and I hated that because I wanted to go back to Kansas City and be with my friends. But what I would do, I would just say, you know what, my dad wants me here. I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and he just loved having me there. So I would
Mhm.
on Sundays often just stay over there, Saturday night, I guess, and Sunday, and hang out with him. And I'm glad that I did. I lost
Mhm.
him when I was 35 years old,
Wow.
and I had 10 years
Of sobriety.
of sobriety while he was alive, and I was able to do that so that when he did go, um, I was comfortable that we had a good relationship, as best as a good a relationship as we possibly could. And I guess when I think about that story, there was a lot of willingness attached to that, because I really had to be willing to give up doing what I wanted to do, run around with my friends, and think about somebody else, my dad.
Mhm.
And it really was intentional on my part at the time. And that's not to say that I didn't enjoy it or get something from it, but I kind of knew what I was doing at the time.
Yeah. And it's about having empathy for the other person and
Yeah.
being willing to listen to what they have to say back.
Yeah.
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 And you never know. I always tell sponsees to do the easy ones first.
Good one. Good
And if you're,
advice.
you're not ready for the bigger ones, then you will be at some point, or you
Mm,
might not.
yeah.
Yeah, but do the easy ones first. But have you ever had somebody make an amends to you and you don't even remember what they were talking about? Like it's really important to them. And then they say, "Oh, I'm sorry when I did so and so," and I don't even remember it
I
happening.
I don't know actually if anyone's ever made amends to me, other than I've had people apologize for stuff that they've done that I didn't think was really that big of a
Right, me
deal, you
too.
know?
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're
Yeah,
like, it wasn't, but to that person, it was a huge deal.
it was. And
Right.
when that happens, it's this is kind of a good thing for me to remember, is like we're talking about, thinking about the other person. Think about the willingness it took for that person to come
Right.
and
True.
talk to you
Yeah.
about something that was that was weighing on their mind.
It was weighing on their minds. And that's the whole point, I think, is to make more room for love and joy and peace.
Yeah,
So all
for
that
sure.
other shit is guilt and shame and avoidance. And, that kind of stuff. If I fill my head with enough of that, I'll have to drink over it. I'll
Right.
have to escape somehow. And I don't pick good escape hatches. So,
Neither do I. Neither do I.
it's a practice. It's a practice.
Here's a good,
Um,
nice comment from Cindy. Last year, my 16th year sober, I finally became willing to make 3 hard amends, and have done so, plus one that I simply hadn't remembered.
mhm.
It was absolutely freeing. That's great, Cindy, and I'm glad that I'm glad that it went well.
It is
Jeff,
freeing. Freeing is a good term. Yes.
yes, it is. Jeff says, I agree with John. Living well is the best amends. It certainly was in the case of me and my dad. And now there were some situations where I had to go to people and say, hey, I'm you did the right thing with me. I was a mess,
Right.
basically. Dale, I'm glad you mentioned living amends. My family appreciates that far more than personal amends that I did. They were and are just happy that I was staying sober. And Dale, when we say living amends, that that takes some intentionality, and it does take some willingness. And it's in some ways, it'd just be easy to say, hey, I'm sorry, I was a jerk, whatever. But really making an intentional effort to change your relationship with somebody and being mindful about how you react with that person takes a lot of willingness and courage to change.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of work that goes into that, for sure.
Yes. And it's, you have to get right on the inside of yourself before you can go to another person. But the steps prior, like someone said here, those are 8 and 9. The steps prior have sort of, you've identified the problem and you've committed to a different way of life. And
That's
you're staying
true.
sober every day. So by the time you get to that, you're kind of ready for it.
Right.
Hopefully.
It's almost a process of recommitting to different aspects of what you're wanting to do. It's like, even though this step might be the only one that talks about willingness runs throughout all of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Because you have to change. I mean, you don't have to, but for me, recovery is changing. It's like not doing the same stuff. It's doing something different. And change is hard. And it does take courage and it does take willingness.
Mani, staying in the next right indicated action and letting go of the result. That's been coming up for me huge. Taking the next right indicated action and letting go of the result. Boy,
Yeah,
yes,
letting
that's
go.
good.
Yeah, letting go of the result. Absolutely. Yeah. But it's also, this is all about, amends is all about asking for forgiveness of the other person, or apologizing for the harsh whatever it was, or the imbalance of whatever it was, or the disrespect, or whatever it was. But also, so important to forgive myself, and forgiving myself first so that I can come to that person with an open heart. And sometimes it's really hard to forgive yourself. It's so much easier, I think, to forgive other people than to forgive myself, because I tend to rehash stuff and go to the shame and guilt part, because all that ties in with other things. It's so important. How do we forgive ourselves? We have to be willing to forgive ourselves. And, I like to say it that I just show up perfectly imperfect. And that helps me just be who I am.
Isabel says, righting the wrong.
Righting the wrong. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you. That's what I was trying to think of, but you're right. Righting the wrong. And like, I've heard of sponsors that would say, like, say somebody stole money at work. But if you were to give it back and to say, I stole money at work, you could be fired. So how else would you make up for what you had done? There are other ways to do that, like contributing to a charity, or there's other balancing out things you can do to make up for what you've done, and to kind of just clean the slate so that you can be in the present.
Fixing those relationships and continuing to nurture them is the thing. I agree, Dale.
Yeah.
But as far as how I'm empowered to do this, I think one thing that would be important for someone who might be kind of new to all of this is not feeling that you're being pressured to do any of this, that it should be a choice of yours.
Yes. Yeah. Don't do it if you're not 100% connected to it.
Yeah. Once it's your choice and you're doing something out of your own volition, that's willingness there.
Yes.
If you're doing something to please someone else, or because you think you have to, might not necessarily be willingness per se, but it might just be that you're grudgingly doing the duty that you were assigned. And I think that the difference between that and having choice is being empowered. So if I have a choice that I'm going to talk to someone about something, that's really empowering. If someone is telling me that I need to do it, or something bad's going to happen to me, feeling less maybe empowered, not so empowered. So I think that's kind of a nice way of looking at it as well.
Fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's that's why, to thine own self be true.
Right.
Is what I say. To thine own self be true. But normally, if there's someone I put on a list that I need to make amends for, it's usually somehow taking up my thoughts or my feelings, or it's keeping me connected to them in a not great way. And so I just want to clean up that level of whatever happened in the past so I can balance it out and forgive myself, forgive them, ask for forgiveness, and then let it go so that I can be in the present instead of dragging the past around like a giant weight of stuff. Yeah. And that's a constant daily practice, really. Yeah. And self-forgiveness is too.
Yes. And I tell you what, I to this day, I've been sober for a long time and been working on trying to be the best possible person I can be. And I'm still continually having to relearn things all the time. It's amazing how I can just fall back into old patterns pretty easily.
Yeah.
But fortunately, I'm not getting drunk and getting thrown in jail. So there is some benefit, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. You got to put down whatever it is first so you can even begin.
Now, Walker says that amends can help, not harm your sobriety. And I think so, if it's done right. Nothing should be able to harm your sobriety. There really isn't anything unless you allow it to. That's a terrible thing to say. I'm not trying to be judgmental for someone who might, relapse or anything, but it's not like there isn't any way that anything can really harm your sobriety, I don't think. But it could make it more difficult.
A lot more difficult. Your thinking it's all about thinking, your thought garden in your head. Where does your sobriety, where is it?
Or what if you go and you make amends with someone who really doesn't want to hear from you?
Well, then you have to be willing to let go of the expectation of any kind of response.
But that's something that I think could, that does take some, that you really do have to be careful about. I know I've shared this story before, and I apologize for the people who've heard it, but I'll never forget the time that I was answering the phones for the AA Central office here in Kansas City. Right? Do you remember
Yeah.
this story?
No, I don't.
This woman called and she was in tears. And she was in tears because her ex-boyfriend, who tormented her, was contacting her to make amends, and she never wanted to see or hear from this guy again, and made it clear to him.
Right.
And she says, "Why do you tell people to do this?"
Right.
She was just
Right.
angry. Why do you tell people to do this? And I just said, "I'm so sorry. We don't. We tell people not to do it if it's going to hurt someone. He should not have reached out to you. He should not." I think she might have even had an order against him or something. I don't know. But it was definitely one of those situations where she was abused by him. For her, she needed him out of her life, period.
Right. And
And
so
the best amends that he could have made to her
was never speak to her again.
never speak to her again, and move on with his life.
Mhm.
And that would take a great deal of willingness there.
Yeah. And so you got to think about, what is your motivation and what is your intention? Is it to make yourself feel better, or it's to honestly humble yourself and say what it was you did and listen to what that person has to say about how it made them feel?
I'm glad you mentioned that, Mary. As you know, I kind of like the smart recovery tools. And I was thinking about this, I was thinking of this whole idea of willingness as being motivation, and one of the tools of smart recovery is, first of all, getting the motivation to change, right?
Yeah.
And so they have this thing called a change plan worksheet. I thought, well, that would work pretty good for this, because, you write down exactly what you're doing and why. So, what do I want to do here? The first thing being changes I want to make. So what relationships do I want to mend? What relationships
So get
do I want to
clear.
mend? Make that, okay. And then you want to say how you want to look at all of those and how important are those. You kind of rank how important they are to you. And then you want to just think about how confident you are that you can do this. And some of them you might be more confident than others. Some of them you might be more willing than others to do, which is fine. And as we said at the beginning, you will focus on those things that are easier to do, and maybe the others might come in later, or you might find you don't even have to do those other ones.
Right.
And then you you kind of write all this out. This is all done in writing. You write out, why, the reasons why you want to make these amends. What are you trying to do here? And what steps you're going to take as you make these. And it's just, just kind of going through this whole process. What kind of help can you get from other people before you embark on this?
Yeah, definitely a good one. Yeah.
And that's another way to build some willingness. If you get some help, guidance makes it a little easier. And how will you know that when you did your amends, that it worked the way that it was supposed to work? In other words, what are we trying to achieve here? And I think what we're trying to achieve here is hopefully a mended relationship, but that might not happen. But at least your side of the street is clean, and you can walk with your head held high, I suppose.
Yeah, you took accountability for acknowledging your harm that you had done.
And I think you would know that. I had an example that quite literally, I could look somebody in the eye when I saw them on the street. That's how I knew that my conversation with them worked.
Yes.
It was a success, because prior to that, I saw the guy walk on the street and I would not want to look at him. I would want to go the other way. So there's a story there. And then some things that could interfere with your wanting to make amends. What are some of the things that could go wrong? To think these things through. And it's kind of just a nice way. I like to write, and if I write things down, it gives me a way to think about things a little bit differently. Quite frankly, if I just let stuff stay in my head and don't put it on paper, it's a mess.
Me too.
And I've been that way ever since I was a kid.
Yeah, agreed. It's a big jumbled up mess. Yeah. Yeah. And it helps, I've had people read me their amends, and then I help them maybe language it in a different way, because language matters.
It does.
It does. And intention matters.
Yeah.
And, and you have to be open to what if that person is still really pissed off with you about it and isn't willing to, change the way they feel about you. You just have to be willing to go there and have the conversation without expectation.
Yeah.
Because your heart is clear, because you're trying to change your life and be a better person. And also because I feel like as an alcoholic addict, I don't have space in my head for the luxury of intense emotions and resentments and things, because then I'll feel uncomfortable in my own skin and I'll want to escape, and I'm wired to want to drink. And so I just can't go there with all those held in resentments and ill will and feelings and blah, blah. And the thing about this step for me, it's a wonderful control center, because I don't like to do amends. And so I have to think about what I'm about to say or do or feel that I might have to make amends for. And so it keeps me from doing things that I might have to amend later. So it's a great way to think, oh, if I said that, then I'd have to go apologize. So then it keeps my mouth shut a lot more often, and it keeps me free of having to put somebody else on the list.
Right. Yes.
It's a deterrent for all kinds of things.
A few more comments we can go through here. Mani says that letting go of the expectation that the situation will change, that they want things to be different. My number one trigger is my mother. She's at the point where any kind of change is terrifying. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. No expectations. That's true.
Bree says that she tells responsees that the first step in the first year has the higher priority than making amends right away. Spot on per comments on living amends. Also, Bree believes in the living amends as well. But yeah, focusing on, don't not jumping into this. I think that's really important too, Bree. Practice willingness and other aspects of what you're needing to change, because there's a lot of work that goes on here, whether or not you're doing it through the 12 steps or any other process. And it takes motivation, or if you want to call it willingness, determination, commitment, all those things,
and clarity.
Yeah. And as you go through this, as you either, whether it's the 12 steps or the tools through Smart Recovery or what you learn from others in Life Ring or whatever you do, as you go through it, you learn about what you've done, and you build strength as you move on. And so the willingness comes and grows. So you might just start with a tiny little bit.
Yeah, baby steps.
Yeah, and it grows.
Yeah.
Moni says that they have to sit with their fear, be compassionate, and try not to help their mother. Not taking other people's response to our amends personally.
Absolutely. That's why it's in if you're new to recovery, I would run by it with someone that you trust. And that's why we say do the steps with a sponsor. Because, you never know what the response will be.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Jaymani wants to talk about Dr. Bob a little bit. I wonder how Dr. Bob got folks to do all these steps in their first week and weekend. I wonder if this is Dr. Bob Smith. I don't even know if, how they did that. It's the whole back to basics thing where they go through the steps like in a week or whatever. I have no idea what they were doing. They didn't know what they were doing. They were so new at it. But we do know a lot more now. And I think that there's some validity to the 12-step process, because in my view, as I look at other ways of recovery, I see a lot of similarities in the process, quite frankly. But to see those similarities, you do have to kind of get rid of the old language and the God stuff. But when you do, and you look at the underlying actions of what we're doing, pretty similar. Mm-hmm. And I think that whatever process they were going through, we probably do experience it, quite frankly. Like if you think about how we become willing to make changes and so forth, all of it kind of does happen kind of suddenly all at once, pretty quickly. But then over time, you really kind of dig a little bit deeper and go a little bit further.
Yeah, it's an onion ring. It
really is. It really is. So maybe those guys in Dr. Bob's day, they did it in 5 days or whatever, but I bet you they had for the rest of their life, they had to continue learning and doing more and more. Yeah. So there's something to that, I suppose. And then Bob reminds us that making amends is about the other person and not about us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're trying to get something out of it, or validation of some sort, it's not the best way to come into it. And it's
Yeah.
also not the best way is to emotionally vomit on people in your amends either.
Right.
So to make yourself feel better, that's not what that's about either.
Right.
So it's a thing to do when you're ready and you have support.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about, when you're ready and you have support. And thank you for mentioning that, because I think if that's one way of getting willingness is having the support. And we talked about that. The people you meet in the meetings, the people that are in your community who support you in your desire to change and be sober.
Mm-hmm.
Those people help you become ready. That's where, if we are empowered from an external source, it could be these other people who support us and encourage us and let us know that we can do it.
And it's also, for me, it's about trust to even talk about my inner things, like to even talk to another person about what I wanted to make amends for would mean to trust that person to tell them my inner past or current, to just talk about what's going on with me. And that takes trust too. So there's so much that goes into it. It's trusting another person. It's trusting the process. It's trusting that I really want to change into a new way of life. And for me, it's about being self-compassionate as well as compassionate with the person who's responding, because I never really made any change beating myself up. Like I have beat myself into submission before on things, but it doesn't last long. So I feel that compassion is a better motivator than guilt and shame.
I think so too. And I really liked what you said about trusting the process. That is a really good way of having some willingness. If you can trust the process a little bit, it does help build willingness and motivation. You become empowered because you have a choice here to do something, and you trust in that process.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like faith. It's not faith.
It
And
is.
I'm not talking about
that.
religious faith, but it's like I have really good negative faith. Like my negative faith game is so strong because I'm always 100% sure something is not going to work out. Like when I'm doing future tripping and I think of the thing, I'm like, that is going to be a disaster. It's never going to work out, blah, 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 blah. And I'm 100% sure of that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? If it's the future and I don't know the outcome, why can't I be as 100% sure that positive stuff's going to happen? Right. Maybe it will work out. My positive faith game is not half as strong as my negative. Like I am 100% sure this shit sucks. It's going to continue to suck. Will never change. But what about the positive side of it? Why can't I have as much positive faith? And it's just a good way to look at it. I'm like, wow, I'm really future tripping in the negative here. And if I don't know the outcome, I might as well make up a good ending of the story. Right?
Yeah. I used to kind of joke about this, but it was really true. I don't think I'm this way anymore, but I had worst case scenario thinking.
Yes.
So I would always think of the worst possible thing that could happen. And honestly, I thought that this was a good way of looking at the world because it would help me avoid these horrible things, I guess.
Yeah. You'd feel better when it didn't happen.
Right. But what a depressing way to think about it. Like I was always prepared for the worst possible
Because
outcome.
If you were prepared, then you wouldn't be disappointed.
Right.
Yeah. So
I almost expected it, I think.
Yeah, exactly. But I was 100% sure it was going to happen. But, I can just as easily develop the other side if it's an unknown. Why not develop the positive side? Why not?
Your friend Jennifer says that she's the same way as you.
Disaster planning.
It's always nice. Bree says that this is one of our best podcasts ever. A great tool for sponsorees. Thanks so much. Opening room later. Gators go.
Okay, bye.
Chiefs.
My bubble says blind.
Bree mentioned the Chiefs. For those of you not from Kansas City, I think you know who the Chiefs are, right? They're going to be in the Super Bowl. Did you not know that, Mary?
No, I did not. The Chiefs and who else? I don't know. I'm not.
Oh God, I think it's the Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh yeah, it is. I heard that. Yeah.
Okay, but I want to tell you, I don't follow football at all, but I will watch the Chiefs. I watched the Chiefs on the playoff game last weekend. That was my first game in a couple of years. and I'm going to watch the Super Bowl
Is
because
that
they're in it.
tomorrow? Is it tomorrow or is it next weekend?
No, I think it's sometime in February. I don't know.
Okay, gotcha.
But that's when I'm a super duper fan. When they're in the Super Bowl, I'm all for them.
Yeah, I'm like that with the Braves. Yeah, the Braves are the Georgia Bulldogs. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm like that, but I couldn't tell you what was going on at all. I have no idea what football's all about, or baseball, really, for that matter. I just like it.
Well, thanks for mentioning that, Bree. It's good to have a little bit of levity here and there.
Yeah. So I think if you have an amends, I think the best advice I would give is to take baby steps, do the easy ones first. And like the person said, it was 16 years, Cindy said, before she did an amends that she needed to do. It took 16 years before it came around to where her heart was open to address it. So not all things need to be addressed. And you just, more will be revealed. And there's a time to not be impulsive. And there's a time to just be patient.
So good. Yep. Especially with this step.
Another person involved.
Yep. If you're not willing, that's okay.
Yeah, that's totally
okay.
Fine.
That's totally okay. Yeah. And don't push it.
No.
Where you are willing and it's the right thing to do and you're confident and you've kind of planned things out and you understand what you're doing and you've talked to other people, you're not going to hurt anybody, then go and do it. You've got the willingness, you're empowered to do it. It's your choice. You're doing it of your own volition and you've got the support behind you so that if things don't work out quite right, you've got people that are in your corner that'll help you.
And then you can talk it through. Yeah, yes, you can talk it through. Yeah. And then also there's another part of it that
thank you, Jennifer.
Is to just not also, there's some things that you don't need to make amends for that you might be feeling guilty about. Like maybe you were justified in that boundary that you made. Maybe that's not something like some people I have noticed in doing amends, they felt like they were a doormat and that they just surrendered and said, I'm a horrible person. I'm sorry for everything I ever did. And maybe
that doesn't work too well.
No, there's some things that are justified that you made a boundary or you ended that marriage or you did whatever and it was a good thing. You don't have to say, I'm a horrible person. I'm lower than the ditch and I'm sorry for everything I ever did and please forgive me because I'm a horrible person. That's not it either. That's not where we're going with this.
No, you're right.
We're getting clarity on my part, the thing, and their part. We're getting clarity on my part. And a lot of times figuring out what your part is really difficult.
Yeah.
Because we bullshit ourselves and sometimes we just normally manipulate situations that we don't even realize we're doing. So that's why it's good to talk to another human being that knows us or that we trust so we can run it by them and they can give it the sniff test.
I'm glad I'm talking to you today because I just thought about when you said that, I thought, God damn, I think I did. I might not be talking to someone else and telling them what a piece of shit I am, but I might be telling myself that,
Right. And that's how we talk to ourselves.
It's my God. Yes. Yeah. What good is that?
It's not. It's just another way to beat ourselves up. And then I'm going to have to do something about it.
Right.
It's never going to be a wise choice. Like I'm not the woman that goes out and runs around the field to get, the energy out. I always do something that's not great. You know what I mean? I'm not like that kind of a athlete that goes and handles it through exercise. I wish I was, and I'm going to declare my intention that that's what I want it to be. And, normally the way I'm wired is I'll do something that's sort of escapism that wastes a lot of time for the most part. So it's all about clarity. And that's why it's so important, I think, to do the steps with another person that you trust, that's been through them, that can say, well, when I did it, they said this, because you never know that person, like you feel like a brand new person and you're not drinking anymore, but people knew that you drank for 30 years and you're a bullshit artist and they're not going to take what you say in a loving way. They're going to wait to see if you really do change and become a better person. So it takes time for some things to come out the other side. And you're right. Yeah, go.
Look at this comment of Jennifer's. It's not about the person, it's about the behavior.
Yeah, it's the behavior for sure. It doesn't mean you're a bad person. It's just that you did a bad thing.
That is so important to remember for us and others. It's not. Yeah. So good. Thank you, Jennifer, for saying that. I appreciate
absolutely
that.
True. Yeah.
God, you guys are helping me out today. I didn't realize what a mess I was.
Oh, stop.
Jay Monty, mending can include justice. It's a heavy word, but if the whirlwind is right. Oh my goodness, our friend Josie is here. What has he got to say? This is a step, maybe they all are, that is a different experience than what I thought I knew it would be. Interesting. so that you're thinking ahead of time that, it's going to be something other than what it turns out to be, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh man, Joe,
I
you're so deep.
I think the ones I thought were going to be easy, sometimes I got the most blowback. And the ones that I thought were going to just be horrible and that I dreaded, that person wasn't feeling it. They were like, okay, it wasn't that big. You just never know what's going to happen. It's really about getting right within yourself before you have the conversation.
Right. Yeah. Oh, you know what I did too when I was getting sober. It took me a while to get to these amends, to actually be physically in the step, because, I went to this group where you had to read the same damn thing every single day for 30 days. Right. So it took a while to get anywhere. So I think I was about 2 years sober, and I was kind of dealing with this amends stuff. I can't even, no, maybe it was even longer than that. I don't know. But anyway.
So it took you that long to get to step 9?
Oh God, it took forever, but with intentionality, right? With intentionality to do it. I jumped ahead. I think all these things you move around, but anyway, when I was there, what I'm trying to say is it turned out that it was taking me so long to get through this that I ended up having to start making amends for stuff I did sober, So,
yes, because so much time.
I was still messing up. Messing up.
Oh, absolutely, we do. Whether we're drinking or not, we're human beings.
True.
I just think it's about keeping the board erased so that I can be in the present. I just want to be in the present. I want more space in my consciousness to be in the present. And I want more room for joy and peace. I mean, who doesn't want more joy and peace on the inside? And when it's all that rocky stuff and people I have to avoid, and usually what I do is I withdraw, or I let my heart turn into a block of ice toward that person. And then they sort of don't exist for me anymore. And I have to really watch that. And be aware that I'm doing it. And that's all about forgive and forget, or forgive and don't do it again. Maybe don't forget, but let it go. Forgetting and let it go are kind of two different things, I think.
What a great conversation this has been. I just have loved this. I've gotten a lot out of it. And thank you, all of you here today in the live stream, for participating and sharing your comments and your thoughts. Thank you, Jennifer, for the idea of discussing the subject. It's honestly something I haven't given any thought to recently, but what an important thing it is to have. If you don't have willingness, how bad of a thing is that, or how do you get it, or and I think we kind of touched on all that stuff today.
Yeah. And then I just want to say one last thing. Have you ever been waiting for an amends that you never got?
Oh man, Mary, these have you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
That for people that owed you amends, right?
Yeah, I mean, I have a real chip on my shoulder about someone that I feel owes me an amends, and I still haven't gotten it. Yeah, and I see them on a weekly basis, and so that is a thing I have to deal with on the inside to not let that resentment keep going in a circle about it. To let that go too. To just let
that
it
is
go.
So interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know if I ever expect anybody to make amends to me for something, but I do sometimes wonder to myself, does that person have any insight into themselves to what they just did? Do they have any freaking clue, of just what a jerk they are?
Yeah.
But I'm not expecting them to come and make it right with me. I'm not. I don't know why, but it would be nice if they did. But that would take some introspection on their part. And I think for a lot of people, there's another reason. That's another way to become that. That helps us become willing. Look at this.
Empathetic.
The steps that come before this. Introspection.
Yeah, absolutely.
Without any introspection, without any idea of what's going on with you, why would you be willing to do anything?
True.
These people that you're wanting to make amends to you, they don't have any idea that they've done anything.
They're living or they feel justified in whatever happened, or they're living their merry lives, and
they don't need to make any amends because they're not bothered by it.
Exactly.
You're bothered by it.
I'm bothered, so I want to get rid of that and let it go. Let it go.
Yes.
Let it go, because that's just resentment. Thinking about the same thing over and over again, expecting different result.
Okay, let's do our last few comments here. Dale says that my dad and I had a very contentious relationship. I was expecting to put it all behind us. His response, "Fuck you." Wow,
Yeah,
Dale. Oh my
yeah,
God, that would be tough.
that
That
would
would be
be.
really tough. I'm so sorry. Um, and Mani, thank you. I came in late, but got a ton from this discussion. And yes, in the program, no one has amends for bad behavior in meetings. Hmm.
Yeah, that's
And
that's true. A lot of
James,
times.
I have seen people apologize to the group in meetings.
I've seen that too.
I've seen that too. I've seen it too. I was wondering, did I ever do that? I don't know if I did or not. I probably felt like it before.
I never
Fred,
apologize for being late, though.
no, you don't have to apologize for
I
being
don't
late
feel like
for
that's necessary. No,
no. You're never late to a meeting except for your first one, as they say, right?
that's true.
And Fred, good day for me just to listen. Very comprehensive discussion. Wow, man. Well, thank you, Fred. I'm glad that you enjoyed that. You know, Mary and I before we get started on these things, I think the first thing we say to each other is, "I don't know what the fuck we're going to talk about."
You weren't supposed to say that out loud.
But it works. And why it works is because of you all. You all
know
make
what?
it work.
And we're willing, and it's a willingness on our part.
It does take a lot of willingness to do this for sure. Oh, I gave it some thought beforehand. You know, I looked some things up. Like I say, I do like to Google shit. Googling shit is my passion.
Oh, I like that. That's a good painting. That's a painting. I'm gonna write that down, John. I'm gonna do something with that.
Googling shit is I'd love
It's
to
my
see
passion.
that.
Googling shit. My passions are Googling shit. Be on a dating profile.
Yeah. Jay Monty, I found family is messy. I cut ties as I wasn't willing to play that back and forth drama. Oh man, me too, Jay Monty. I don't know. That's a subject for another day. You know, here in the last few minutes. But yeah, my family of origin is just such a mess, and it's just going to probably have to be that way. I'm afraid it's just the way that things turned out, and I'm sorry that it is. But I'm happy otherwise. And I've got family that aren't family that I consider.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
there you go.
Yep.
Well, everybody, thank you once again. It was great to be here with you. We'll have another topic next week. We don't know what it will be, but
No
like
idea.
Jennifer, throw us an idea, give us an idea, and we'll talk
give us
about
an idea. Send John an email.
Yeah, send me an email, john@beyondbeliefsobriety.com. So, Mary, let's say goodbye. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
And I'm
Have
going
a
to go
good
ahead.
week.
All right. Take care, everyone. And now the outro music. I'm always so bad at doing this. There we go. Bye.